Tonight's episode is brought to you by my book, Shape Up Your Memory, available on Lulu.com. Hello, everyone. How are you doing tonight? Tonight is Odds and Ends and Odd Things in Psychology. Want to cover some things that you might have questions about, and we're entertaining those in the chat right now. And some odd topics that I wrote down that just don't fit anywhere else. We've already got a question. Thesis has a question for a friend he has on Facebook. Says she's going through EMDR therapy. What is that? Okay, good question. That's one that has come up before. It is, I've considered it an odd therapy. They will have you watch a light or move your eyes from side to side rapidly. Or maybe you'll tap the side of your head repeatedly with your eyes closed. And this has been actually proven to be helpful to people. I'm not sure, because the research does show that it does help people. But I'm not sure whether it's a placebo effect of being in therapy, or whether it's somehow, as the founders of the movement say, it is distracting you from your anxieties, your issues, your phobias, whatever, and it's making you feel a little different maybe, and you're able to relax a bit more. So is it a self-hypnosis type of thing? We're not really sure, but it does seem to work. And it brings up an interesting story. The story is that this gal is walking down the beach. And along the beach, there's a bunch of starfish that have washed up. And if they don't get back in the water, they will die. They will perish. And the girl picks one up and flings it. Picks another one up, flings it back into the ocean. Picks a third one up, flings it back in the ocean. After a while, somebody comes along and they're like, you can't possibly throw all these starfish back in the ocean. Okay? You're not going to save them all. And she picks up the next one and she says, but I'll save this one, as she flings it in the ocean. And that is kind of how I feel about therapy, is that whatever therapy it is, even if it's something that looks a little weird and feels a little weird, but if it helps you somehow, then it's good therapy. So the EMDR therapy, I think, even though to me it doesn't feel like we're doing much with that person, we're not really talking about the problems and such, it's just being in a therapy sometimes will help some people. But also remember that I said that most therapists are eclectic and they will use more than one technique when they do therapy. So it's possible that people that are getting the EMDR therapy are also getting some form of talk therapy, perhaps a client-centered therapy, as we talked about before with Carl Rogers. Perhaps they're getting some other type of therapy. So it helps, okay? So we'll keep flinging those starfish back in the sea one at a time, trying to help those who want the help. Okay. Hello, everyone. We saw some folks coming late. That's cool. First off, an apology to especially Foxy, but to anybody else who watched the Gloria tapes. The link that I shared has cut off the last part of that particular series. I don't know why they did that. But the last part of that series was an interview with Gloria where they ask her, what type of therapy do you think you'd like to continue with? And we'll talk about the third therapy first. She had read some books by the therapist who was our last one, Albert Ellis. But she said that he was just too fast for her. He was just very directive. If you saw that, he was trying to demonstrate the principles of his therapy, which are good. That's what the film was about. But he was just kind of rapid fire to her, and she was like, he made me think too much, and I wasn't sure if I could keep up with him. She mostly liked the client-centered therapy that Carl Rogers gave her. She felt that he was really real with her, and he was listening to her, and could try to deal with her problems, but he wasn't giving her a direction, perhaps. She didn't feel like maybe it would progress very rapidly. So, surprisingly, against everyone's odds, she chose to go back with Fritz Perl for the Gestalt therapy, and actually followed through with that and had several sessions with him. So, even though he really made her uncomfortable at first, and he really pushed her, she felt that his therapy and his technique and his personality, I guess, in challenging her was what she needed. And so she went back with him, and I guess did okay with that. Now, we should not have been able to see the Gloria tapes. And I'll tell you why. When Gloria signed that release, she said that she understood that this was for psychology classes only. Okay? And she was very open in her sessions about what troubled her. And so the fact that we were able to watch it was not intended. But also probably someone in the production, the producer or assistant producer, whoever was the greediest one, actually changed the name of this from 3 Approaches to Psychotherapy. They changed the name to the Gloria Tapes. And they actually put it in some theaters to make money off of it. Gloria did not like that. She tried to sue them. Sadly, she had signed her rights away for that, and she really felt uncomfortable, especially the part about she was talking about her sexual tendencies, of that being in a movie theater with ticket-paying customers off the street to see her therapy. And so it really caused her some problems with that. And that was the sad part. Another sad part is that Gloria ended up having some sort of cancer. I think it was ovarian cancer, and she passed away at 49 years of age. So we really can't reach out to her. But her daughter wrote a book about how she was dealing with the Gloria tapes. And it's been a long time ago, but I'm trying to find a copy of that book. Okay. Okay, yes. The first therapy, the client-centered therapy, is a very popular one, and so if that resonated with you, or you think that was like your own type of therapy, if you've ever gone to therapy and the person was very open and non-committal as far as giving you direction and letting you pick the direction, then that's probably thanks to Carl Rogers. Okay. Another topic I wanted to bring up was one that I didn't put in because it just kind of didn't quite fit in with a lot of what we were talking about. But that is, it's called the Rosenhan experiment because Dr. Rosenhan was the one that did it. And it's very telling of our mental health system at that time. At the time, we had a lot of psychiatric hospitals. We still do, but there's been a big push to get people out of psychiatric hospitals if possible. And with treatment, a lot of people have been able to make it without. And some people have not been able to make it without. A lot of the homeless population is probably people who might have benefited from psychiatric and hospitalization at one time or another. But at the time, Rosenhan thought, okay, I wonder how easy it is or how hard it is for a person who gets into a mental hospital, a psychiatric hospital, to get back out once they no longer showed symptoms. So he had some students and Confederates who would go in and they would say, I'm hearing hallucinations. I'm hearing voices. And I know that they're not there. I'll ask other people and they say, no, there's no way talking. They were hospitalized. After that, they were supposed to drop all those symptoms and act normally. Many of them made notes of what was going on in the mental hospital while they were there, but that was the only odd behavior they would show. Several other patients would come up to them and say, "You're not crazy. I think you're faking it." But only a few were released from the hospital very soon with a diagnosis of schizophrenia in remission. Okay? Wow. I mean, they had faked it, but they still got schizophrenia in remission on their outpatient papers. A few of them had to be rescued by Rosenhan calling them up and saying, this particular person is part of an experiment and you should release them because they are not in danger at all. They do not have hallucinations. Another experiment that Rosenhan did after this, he would lecture about his experiment to mental health professionals and people who worked in psychiatric hospitals. So the second part of his experiment was, he said, I have sent in people to your people. I see here, I see some of you here. I have sent people to your institution and they're faking it. Can you tell who they are? Well, there were quite a few people who, went back to their hospital and said, I think this guy is one of Rosenhan's plants, and I think that person might be too. But he hadn't planted anybody the second time. It was just opening up their minds to the fact that maybe not everyone belongs in your hospital. And it was a very eye-opening experience for those people who were running the hospitals to say, maybe we need to look at our intake a little more carefully, and maybe we need to have a shorter release time for some people. Because, yes, Trey, it is a terrifying thing that these folks couldn't get back out without an outside influence coming in and saying, hey, he's one of our students. You need to release him right away. I hope they got extra credit for doing that. Or at least, hey, good job. Here's your doctorate. You've made it. Okay. So yeah, that was one of the things that didn't quite fit in with some of the other things that we've talked about. And I wanted to mention it because it does tell us something about our mental hospitals at that time. He wrote a book called Being Crazy in Insane Places, I believe is the title. If you have more interest in that and you want to read about it. Okay. Another thing that doesn't really fit in anywhere else exactly, but I did want to talk about is the phenomena of synesthesia. Synesthesia is where your senses kind of cross, and people with synesthesia might not have a problem with it, so they might not report it as a problem or go in seeking sort of treatment for it. It kind of reminds me of our little cartoon here, how the brain works. Synesthetic persons will hear colors. I mean, if they see a color, it might resonate a tone in their ears. They might smell sounds. It really doesn't affect them a lot. If it gets to be really difficult, they might report it as a problem. But most of the time, they just think everybody's brain works that way. You don't, until they talk to somebody, you don't smell colors. You don't, wow, okay. I thought it was everybody. Guess it was just me. It goes back to that egocentric thing, where if the problem seems like it's part of your personality and you just, okay, I guess that's just me. I guess my brain works differently. Okay. Another thing I want to talk about is the phenomena of liminal spaces. And break in with a question if you have one at all. Liminal spaces are places that normally would be okay if we saw other people there, or if we saw something that was happening or whatever. But liminal spaces are those places that usually are a transition from one thing to another. They're like a lobby or just an empty room you have to go through to get to something else. And some people love them, and most people don't. Most people feel a weird, uncomfortable sensation around liminal spaces. The one I showed was one that was very famous. A lot of people talk about those. Some people actually went through years of searching to find where that particular picture was taken. It bothered them that much. They had to find out where that was. Turns out it was a furniture store that basically had put up new wallpaper, and they had moved all the furniture out of there for a while. That's why there's so many spaces going back. I'll show the picture again. That's why there's so many places going back. Each of these would have had like a bedroom set or a dining room set or something like that in there. And that was their showroom. But when it was emptied of the furniture and the new wallpaper put up, and they took a picture of it, and it just freaked some people out. It really, really bothered people. So a lot of times when people are going through like a hotel lobby, it's early in the morning perhaps, and there's nobody around, they just feel a little weirded out by that. So that's just something, if you've ever experienced that, that's what we call that, liminal spaces. Okay. Another thing that sometimes bothers people, but it's not a psychiatric sort of thing, is called sonder. Sonder is when you finally realize that everybody else, including strangers, somebody that you drive by or whatever, they have a life like yours. It's complex. They have their own problems, they have their own issues, and they're living despite you knowing anything about it. Okay? And the first time you realize that other people are other people like you, and they have their own problems, and they don't think about you at all because they don't know you, it's an eye-opening experience for people. Usually you come through this in your formative years, probably, but for some people, that bothers them. And some people don't ever have sonder. They don't realize exactly that other people are just like them. Those are usually the narcissistic types. So, yeah. Okay. If I'm going through these and you have a question or comment, yeah, a lot of people have had the liminal spaces issue. Yeah. Another thing I wanted to talk about, which is an odd topic, ASMR. It's the whispering that people sometimes do on the internet. There's a lot of YouTube videos about this, and it gives you almost an itchy feeling in your hair. This has fallen into misuse in recent past because people turned it into a very sexual type of thing. When it first was tried and people were doing it, they were doing it kind of as a relaxation technique for other people to help them fall asleep and relax, maybe kind of like a hypnosis. But it kind of, people said, well, it's like a brain orgasm I've just had. It's like, ooh, okay. And there are a lot of fans of ASMR. There's an actual acronym for that. Let's see. What do they call it? Autonomic Sensory Methodological Response. Kind of a weird name for that. Yes, Foxy, I have trouble understanding what they're saying because they're whispering. So I have to turn the volume up. And then it's like, oh, okay. That kind of defeats the purpose of that. Oh, yeah, Trey, there's people that will be like scratching things. And that's the ASMR they do. Or they wad up papers and then unwad the paper and then wad it again. Or they leaf through books near their microphone so you can hear it. But like I say, it has been now changed by people to a more sexual type of thing, and a lot of folks don't like that part of it. So it's fallen out of favor, so you don't see a lot of the people who used to do it doing it so much anymore because they're afraid they'll be tainted by the others that have misused it somewhat. But it is an interesting phenomenon to have. Hey, Don. Okay. Another type of thing we talked about before kind of goes into the hallucinations, but not quite, because it's not due to a psychotic episode. That is called the Third Man Incident. Ernest Shackleton and his team that were going to try to find the South Pole, they had some problems on the way. They had to turn back. I think there might have been 3 of them, but they saw a 4th person there with them sometimes. And Shackleton thought, oh, okay, I'm losing it. I don't know what's going on. And he confessed to one of the other guys afterwards. He said, I felt we were going to be okay because I thought there was this 4th person that was looking after us. And one of the other guys there said, I had that same thing happen. I felt that someone was with us watching us. And some people would say, okay, that was a religious experience, perhaps. Some people would say, well, they were almost out of food. They didn't have the proper nutrition. They were eating whatever they could. Maybe, because of that, they had a one-time hallucination. But whatever, it was to them a very freaky incident. And T.S. Eliot wrote a poem about it. And the poem was The Third Man. That's where we come from, the name of it. It has happened on Mount Everest. It's happened at other places where people were at the point of giving up. And for some reason, this vision that they had gave them the strength carry on, and they survived. So, if you live to tell about it, the third man was very useful for you. Okay. Another phenomena that people used to worry about a lot more, they don't worry about it now, but it was the voodoo curse. That someone could say, I put a curse on you, and they would be doing something to the voodoo doll, or perhaps the curse was a curse in words. And the person would feel like, oh my gosh, I have the curse now. And everything bad that happened to them, they would blame the curse for. It's not their own poor decision making at all. No, it was the curse. Or just chance, luck, bad luck. But the curse had them. And they would often go to try to find some sort of spiritual person to take the curse off of them. It's amazing what your own mind can do. I mean, if you tell a person, I'm putting the curse on you, the evil eye or a voodoo on you, many times that person's mind will take that inside, and it will drive them to extremes. They probably need therapy. Perhaps whoever helps them through the experience spiritually, like the voodoo priest they hired to take the curse off. Perhaps being with them was a form of therapy. They were able to have a catharsis and get it out of their system and feel better about it. I thought for a while after I saw a curandero perform a ritual that I wanted to be a curandero. These folks kept thinking that evil spirits were in their house and they needed to get rid of them. So they hired this man, healer called the curandero, and he came in to their home. He put a sword down in their doorway, and he put lighter fluid along it in a S pattern. So it's kind of back and forth and zigzagging. He lit it on fire. So here's this burning sword with this S pattern on it. And he had them stand over the sword while he would take a sip of rum and then spit it over them. Okay? And he spit on the sword and put it out, but he spit on the people. And I thought, they paid him to do this. What a gig, huh? But whatever it was, they felt much better afterwards. They were able to work it out, and having this experience of the curandero coming in and curing them and curing their house of the spirit allowed them to live without any more fear. So, yeah, I thought, that's a good job, huh? Oh, yes. Yes, whoever has Foxy's doll, please stop it. If you weren't so far away, Foxy, I'd come and put some rum on you, but you have to do it by yourself. Okay. Another experience that's just kind of weird, but doesn't quite fit in with a lot of our other psychological topics, is the topic of deja vu. That feeling that you've been somewhere before, or you've been through an experience before, and it kind of bothers you for a second or two. You're like, okay, what's going on here? I remember this place, but I know I've never been here before. And current research has done some work in this, and they think that the deja vu experience is actually your brain's error checking system. Okay? You go into a place and maybe there's a piece or two of furniture there that's familiar to you. Maybe it was in your aunt's house and you've only been to her house once maybe, but that chair reminds you so much of it that you're like, I've been here before. I've seen this chair before. I I haven't been here before, but I feel like I have. And that's your brain doing what it's supposed to do and saying, that's not a true memory. I've got your memories right here, and your memory, that's not true. So after a while, the feeling goes away. Yes, a glitch in the matrix. Thank you, Trey. Yeah. And deja vu can be very strong. But they have found through doing these experiments with people who talk about their deja vu experience, they've been able to replicate that in a lab. They give you the VR goggles and they'll show you a bunch of places, and then they'll show you a place you haven't seen before, but maybe some of the furniture or some of the furnishings, or maybe even the wallpaper is the same. And they'll say, have you seen this place? Yes. No. Yes. No, I don't think I've seen that place before, but it looks familiar. And so they've been able to actually reignite the feeling of deja vu in folks. Yes, I've had a few too, Foxy. It's really a bizarre experience when you're going through it. And I've had some people say, well, I'd like to really try to experience that again, but it's very hard to replicate something like that unless you have an idea of what caused it. So if we think that it's maybe, recognizing pieces of the environment, but not the whole environment, that might give us some chance of reestablishing that. And so they've had some luck with the VR goggles and re-triggering that for people. It's still something I don't think I'd want to be in that experiment, because I don't always feel very comfortable when I do have deja vu. Oh, okay. Thesis is sharing. His brother's first wife brought him back a voodoo doll from their honeymoon. I don't know exactly how to feel about that. If it was a generic voodoo doll, okay, and it was not made for you specifically, then I don't think there's anything to worry about. I don't think that means any ill intentions from her. However, if she said, could I have a lock of your hair, please? I would say, she's not on my side. I'm sorry. So, yeah. I believe that for the most part, they will, take a lock of hair or your toenail or something like that, and they will put it in that doll. And then they of course, for it to actually work, they have to tell you about it somehow. Okay? It doesn't just happen until the person knows there's a voodoo doll of them. So that tells me very much so that this is a psychological phenomenon and not a metaphysical one. Okay? It's you do it to yourself afterwards. Oh, okay, good. The kitty cat moved. I can move my feet now. Donna says that voodoo dolls were actually used to record medical records because slaves weren't allowed to read and write. Okay, yes, exactly. The original purpose of them was to, the voodoo practitioner would put a pin where that person reported a pain. Okay, it wasn't the other way around at first. They would use that as a record so that they would look back and say, oh, okay, last time Henry came in here, he was complaining of a backache. So I will ask him how his back is feeling now. So, yeah, it was a medical record. Exactly. Yeah. But it was perverted by other people who had more evil thoughts in mind. And they probably kind of knew that they could push the person over the edge by telling them they were cursed. Oh, Deja Vu also has a cousin called Deja Reve, R-E-V-E. Deja Reve is when you experience something in real life while you're awake and you say, I've had a dream about this. It's not like, okay, I've been here before, but it's something that you say, I had a dream about this just the other night, or I had a dream about this 2 years ago and this happened. So that's what they call déjà rêve. Bet you didn't know that, huh? I didn't know that until I watched a show that talked about a lot of these kind of things. So, okay. Let's see. What else did we want to talk about tonight? I think I've run through most of the things that I wanted to get out there and talk about. Does anybody have any others they would like to discuss? And I'll try my best to answer the questions. Wow, okay. Everybody must have been watching the same videos I was to learn about the voodoo doll patient records. Okay, you do the dream thing a lot? Okay, yeah. Yeah, a lot of people have that. Another dream thing, while we're waiting to see if anybody has any other questions, the Hat Man, okay? This is something that a lot of people have reported dreams about. They will say, I saw a guy, and he's in shadow. I couldn't really see his face. He was dark and kind of over in the dark there. But I could see he was wearing this hat. And sometimes they'll say, I could see his eyes, or I could see a glowing where his eyes should be. And then they wake up from the dream terrified, of course. You would. Someone in, I believe it was Seattle, wanted to know, okay, I've had this dream about the Hat Man. I want to know, do other people have this dream? And they put out posters that said, have you seen this man in your dreams? Call this number. And there's another guy that people would see, and he looks a lot like the guy from Operation, the game. Kind of nondescript kind of guy. And people have reported dreams about seeing that guy. And they shared a drawing of him, and they also said, if you've seen this guy, call this number. And lots of people did. I'm not sure if it is a misidentification, because, it looks like a wanted poster, what they were sharing. It's just like a police sketch, so that could fit lots of different dream people. And a lot of times you'll see a police sketch and you'll go, I know a guy kind of looks like that. Well, okay, yeah, they're so generic that many times I think people would call in saying, yeah, I saw a guy like that, but his nose was bigger. Okay, it counts, so I'm not sure if that's maybe part of it. Carl Jung would have said that that's a person from our collective unconscious, kind of like a archetype of scary things. And there are very few things that we are really kind of afraid of without any reason to be. We've never had an experience with them. One is falling. Okay, even if you've never fallen, you could be scared of falling. Another one is snakes. A lot of people are they've never had a bad experience with a snake, but just the way snakes act triggers something in the primordial brain that says, oh my gosh, look out, look out. So maybe Hat Man is one of those things that all of us have somewhere back in the deep subconscious, that we just think, some guy in a hat in my room at 2 a.m. is not good. Okay? And the dream could scare you quite a bit. Okay, as Trey says, I can't take Benadryl anymore. I owe the Hat Man money. Yeah. That would be a good reason to avoid him too, by the way. Okay. Seeing the Hat Man while you're awake and never in your sleep. Now, is this Is this in public? Because I mean, I wear a hat when I go outside, so I could be the Hat Man in some people's thoughts, I guess. It would just depend. You know, if you're alone and you just see some creepy person with a hat, it could inspire some fear, and that would be understandable. If the Hat Man is wearing a fez, yeah, don't get near that guy. And my sweet wife, Donna, I thought I saw the Hat Man, but it turned out to be the Witzman dude. Yep. Okay, Foxy, that's the second time you mentioned that the Hat Man was on your porch. Okay, out of the corner of your eye? Okay. Interesting. Some people have said things that you see out of the corner of your eye could be floaters in your eye. We all have flaws in our eyes. Sorry to tell you this. If I look into a bright light for a while and then look back, I see this weird S-curve thing in my eye. I don't know how that got burned into my retina somehow, but that's just maybe an injury I had one time when I was a child. And if I'm not careful, I'll go, oh, what the hell was that? And so those things you see sometimes out of the side of your eye can be very tricky. Okay? Yes, you saw me fall into counselor mode. Yes, exactly. Yes, I'll make another note for you. Don't worry. No, I'm not here to try to psychoanalyze people, but I am here to try to help you understand some things and maybe not fall into traps of anxiety when there might not be any reason for anxiety. So that's all we're trying to do here. Okay, we've covered a lot of that. This is probably going to be our last session, folks. Like those counselors that get involved with their patients and don't want to end the therapy or whatever, it's hard for me to let go of this and say, hey, we're done. But we've covered all the topics that were in my class and actually in the abnormal psychology class. And, unless people feel that they need another of these, and you'll have a bunch of questions for me, I think we're drawing towards the end of this series. Floaters in the eye, they can be gunk, but they could be from previous injuries to the eye. They vary as to whether they're just short term or they're long term. Like I say, if I look into a bright light and then I look back or close my eyes, I can see this S shape, and it floats around in my eye. If I move my eye right to left, the floater will also move with it. It's really weird. But it's there. It's part of my eye. I just have to make sure that if I'm looking kind of to the side, that I don't mistake that, in traffic for another car or something. And knowing that the eye does have some oddities, and everybody has something like that, makes you a little more open to scientific explanations for things. It's not always the Hat Man sneaking up behind you. Okay. Yes, Foxy, brains are so unique and fascinating. Each of us from a different hereditary background and a different upbringing. We all create this inner world, this castle that we were talking about before, that is the mind. And we don't even know what's in our own minds, let alone what's in other people's minds. I think that's why the whole idea of ESP is so fascinating to people. If I could read other people's minds, what would I learn? I'm not sure that would be a blessing or a curse sometimes. Yeah. Yeah, it would come in handy in counseling, but you'd have to be able to shut it off. But yes, we really don't know what even goes on in our own heads half the time, which is interesting because the first people who turned philosophy into psychology tried to do it only by introspection, only by looking at their own thought processes, trying to take their own minds apart to see how they worked. But we haven't got very far with that. Right, exactly. Carl is going back into retirement. Well, I want to thank everybody who's come to these and everyone who's shared, because that really made it useful, hopefully to you and to others. I hope that it has helped people and not made people feel too weird. Always remember that, if you have a crisis, help is available. Okay? So be sure to always look on that side of there is help. Okay? I'm not in this life alone. And if I need somebody, they're there. But I think that will probably conclude tonight's show and this whole series. And like I say, I want to thank everybody who came by, everyone who shared. Thanks very much. And you all have a great evening, okay?